Chapter 5, page 138. Why do we have rules and laws? Rules for everyone. Have you ever tried to play soccer or a game online without knowing the rules? To play any game, you need to learn the rules. Rules let you know what you can and cannot do. Rules are intended to make games fair because they apply to everyone equally. Once you know the rules, you can take part in the game and have fun. Your family, school, and community also have rules. To live and work together with people, you need to learn and follow the rules. Rules that people have agreed upon help everyone in a community or group get along with one another. Rules also help keep communities safe and make sure that everyone is treated fairly because everyone follows the same rules. Do we need a provincial bike helmet law? Saskatchewan does not have a provincial law that requires bike riders to wear helmets, but the city of Yorkton has a bylaw that does. There, bike riders not wearing a helmet must pay a $5 fine. Some people think the whole province should have a helmet law like Yorkton's. What do you think? This is what Tyler and Crystal have to say. I don't think it's the provincial government's job to tell cyclists what to wear. The government has more important things to worry about than that. Crystal, making a bike helmet law will prevent people from getting injured. It might even save lives. Page 141. Laws for the people. Governments are responsible for making laws. Laws are often based on values such as peace, freedom, respect for cultural differences, and fairness. Governments also make laws to keep communities as safe places to live. These laws, which apply to everyone, help people live, work, and play together. Your rights and responsibilities. In any community in Saskatchewan, people have rights and responsibilities. Rights are based on values and ideas that people in the community share. In your classroom, for example, everyone has the right to express an opinion. Everyone also has the right to be heard. Rights and responsibilities go together. Just as you have the right to express your opinion, you also have the responsibility to listen to the opinions of others. Look at the photos on this page. What responsibility do you think goes with each right? Government, an organization of people who make decisions and rules for a community, province, or country. Responsibility, the duty to do something. Page 142. How are villages, towns, reserves, or cities governed? Have you ever been woken up by the sound of a garbage truck collecting the trash on your street? That is the local government at work. In Saskatchewan, the local, provincial, and First Nations governments share the job of making sure that their citizens have safe, comfortable lives. The government that does this in your municipality, village, town, reserve, or city is called the local or municipal government. Look at the diagram below. What does it show about the role of local government? Local government collects taxes to pay for services. Laws, services, leadership. Local government at work. Your local government is made up of people who live in your community. Creates laws that are intended to help the community run safely and smoothly. Invites local people to express their opinions about how the community is run. Provides services to meet people's needs. Collects taxes to pay for the services. Who's who in local government? Saskatchewan is made up of rural and urban communities. Each community has its own government. The diagram below shows how most municipal governments are organized. Urban, of or relating to a city or town. People, mayor or reeve, councillors or alder people, administrator, departments, public works, parks and recreation, fire, water, and sewer. Page 144. Making decisions for the community. The mayor or reeve and councillors are alder people are elected to make decisions for the community. Most of these decisions are about community programs, services, and laws. The decisions are made during council meetings. Elect, to choose a person by voting. Council, a group of elected representatives who make decisions for a local area. Councillor, a member of the council who has been chosen through voting by the people. Councillors. Councillors work on committees. As committee members, they discuss local issues, such as road maintenance and recycling, and make recommendations to council. The council then uses this information to make decisions. Serving the community. The town of Larange, village of Air-Range, and Lac La Ronge Indian Band work together to provide essential services for their residents. We strive to provide the best services possible for the over 8,000 people who live in our area. Mayor of Larange, 2012. Page 145. Community members get involved. When decisions are made, members of the community can let council know what they think. For example, they can speak at council meetings or volunteer on committees that advise the council. The local government of the town of Larange is made up of departments. Each department is responsible for a service or community interest, such as business development. Many people work in these departments, doing jobs such as running libraries, repairing roads, and caring for public parks. What services like these do you use in your community? Page 146. How are First Nations peoples governed? First Nations in Saskatchewan. Long before Europeans set foot in North America, each First Nation had its own government. These governments were organized to meet the needs of the people and the community while thinking ahead for future generations. Several leaders took charge in areas where they were the most skilled. For example, the leader of the hunt was a skilled hunter. The leader of the medicine lodges was a master of making people well. And the leader of the traditional practices was inspired by the Creator. Rules needed to coexist. Once Europeans arrived, it was necessary to find a way to make rules so that the European newcomers could coexist with the First Nations peoples who were already here. After hundreds of years, these rules led to treaty negotiations. Page 147. Treaty negotiations begin. There was a difference in worldviews when treaty negotiations began. The First Nations wanted to keep what they had had before contact with the European newcomers, including their governments. The European newcomers wanted to own land and bring other people here to live. First Nations believed in sharing the land and looking after it for future generations. Many Europeans believed they could take resources from the land for their benefit during their lifetime. In spite of differences in worldviews, treaty negotiations took place. These negotiations became the basis for the relationship between First Nation peoples and the European newcomers in Saskatchewan. This formed the treaty relationship. Treaty relationship. The sacred and special connections between nations that sign treaties. The relationship lasts forever, and so do the promises made. Reserves are created. During treaty negotiations, First Nations received tracts of land called reserves. The amount of this land was based on a formula worked out during treaty discussions. Over time, the Europeans decided more rules in addition to the treaties were needed. These rules became laws. In 1876, the Canadian government passed the Indian Act. The Indian Act was created to regulate First Nations peoples and manage their land, or reserves. Page 148. Reserves today and land claims. When reserves were initially set up, many First Nations did not receive all the land they were entitled to under the treaties. Land claims and treaty land entitlement claims were created to settle the land debt owed to the First Nations. Once an agreement is reached, then a certain amount of land is identified or a cash settlement is provided. or both. This allows the First Nations to purchase federal, provincial, territorial, or private land to settle the land debt. There are 74 First Nations in Saskatchewan today. These nations have reserves for their peoples to live on. Of course, not all First Nations people live on reserves. Saskatchewan's rural areas, villages, towns, and cities are all home to First Nations peoples. Band chiefs and councils. The First Nations governing body on a reserve is called a band council. It is made up of a chief and band councillors. These men and women are leaders in the community who work together to decide on actions to help the people on the reserve. The chief and councillors are selected by the people who live on the reserve, and in some cases, the people who live off the reserve. There are two main ways this selection happens. One way is community or custom election codes. These codes provide the rules to select chiefs and councillors for those First Nations who are not under the Indian Act election rules. This selection process may be different depending on the First Nation and is often unique to the specific community. Often they look to the past and use traditions from their ancestors. The other way is Indian Act elections, where the people follow the Indian Act election rules to choose a chief and council. Selection of First Nation chiefs. Before European newcomers arrived, First Nation chiefs in Saskatchewan were chosen, depending on the traditions and needs of the individual First Nation. Today, different methods may be used to select chiefs, but people still look for similar qualities in the leaders they chose. Look closely at the Venn diagram below. What does it show about the selection of First Nations chiefs? How is this an effective way to present the information? Choosing First Nation chiefs. In the past, position often passed down from father to son. Leaders identified at birth, raised by grandparents, and given guidance to become a strong leader. Leadership could be shared. Leadership could change depending on needs. Chiefs sometimes selected on the basis of who was best for the task at hand, depending on the need at the time. No female chiefs before 1960. However, Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota women led the camp in times of crisis. Choosing First Nation chiefs in present day. Chiefs are elected by custom election codes or Indian Act elections. Often have legal background, well known in the community and know in its needs, know how to work with people to achieve goals, skilled at working with provincial and federal governments, usually skilled in business and economics, numerous female chiefs. And the same, has respect for different opinions,